G'day and welcome back to Crank the Third. This is the podcast where we explore the entrepreneurial and creative side of life post 50. The goal of the show is to inspire energised, forward-thinking 50-somethings to continue to think expansively and creatively about their current situation and to ponder, plot and plan the exciting road they have ahead of them. Inspiration and energy, two great words that certainly reflect today's chat with one Mr. Richard Sauerman, aka The Brand Guy. Richard is a motivational speaker and brand consultant, and he's the author of the book, Are You Living Your Resume or Your Eulogy? Great name that. Richard is a thinker and a humorist with a massive interest in people and the human condition. He has been ranked in a global top 30 brand gurus list since 2014. So that's a fair effort there. And he's been a brand and communication strategy lead at some of the world's biggest advertising agencies, including Saatchi & Saatchi, DDB, McCann Erickson, as well as in his own business, working on global brands such as Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Levi's, Vodafone. You may have heard of one or two of those. He has a terrific background, but this is not going to be a conversation about marketing and branding, but about the belief and conviction to step outside of our comfort zone and to live large. And I got to tell you, Married at First Sight, yes, the reality TV show, otherwise known as MAFS, also gets a look in as well. So this is a high velocity chat and it's peppered with F-bombs and plenty of laughter. Get pumped, strap in, let's go, because I reckon you're going to be really pumped and ready to go at the end of it. So let's dig in. Richard Sauerman, thank you for joining us here on Crank the Third, my friend. What were you doing 15 years ago?
15 years ago, my life was very, very different. It was the family life. You know, my kids were all still at school, so we were living at home, big house. I was working for myself. I'd left advertising. I was still working for myself. I remember all that. But it was just a very different existence to what I have today, where I live on my own now, you know. The kids are all growing up. They're out of my life in that way. And yeah, it's like a new era for me now at the moment. So,
well, we talk about in the show. There's sort of three chapters that people probably go through: the 20s to 35, where you don't know anything. You probably think you do. You're 35 to all your 40s. You're nailing it left, right, and centre. But the last, once you starting to get around 50 plus, you've been in the third chapter in your of your professional life, and you come with a lot of experiences and skills and wisdom and knowledge, and it's a different time of life.
Well, like 3 trimesters. That's what I always say. 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. I'm, it's comfortably in the third trimester, going along. But it's kind of interesting when you talk about older and wiser and all that, because I think there's still a lot of, prejudice and discrimination against older people when it comes to that. When you hit, like in some industries, like the advertising marketing industry, you hit 50, you're considered well over the hill. And there's very few people over that age still employed by, let's say, advertising agencies. I know that for a fact. It's a pretty widespread thing. It sort of starts to hit people when they're about 45 and they might lose a job, and then they're looking for something and they're suddenly finding like that they're not getting through. And it's like, hold a second, what's going on here? And I actually branded a company that has got a platform for mature age workers. So I know quite a bit about the issue, and it's something it kind of, I wonder if it impacts me, still today. I mean, obviously I work for myself and I pitch for jobs and things. And I wonder if ever I don't get a job or lose out or don't get an opportunity because they, look at him. Oh, he's a bit past it. He's a bit old, I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't be applying for a job because A, I wouldn't get it, I don't think, and B, I wouldn't stand it either.
So I said in the intro, you're a motivational speaker, you're an author, and you're known as The Brand Guy. So a bit of a portfolio career at the moment, or gig, your business. What's a day in the life look like?
It's not that interesting, to be honest, I have a routine and I like to stick to it. working from home at the moment, so I sit here and I work away here, so I don't even go to an office anymore. Yeah, and that's, what I do. I don't like traveling. I don't like being away from my space and my home and my life over here. So a day in the life looks pretty ordinary, but most of my work, I'm a thinker, goes on in my head and my brain. And I'm actually writing again at the moment. I'm writing something, another book. And that's what I do. I just sit here and get all my thoughts out and type away like mad. And that's pretty much what a day in the life looks like. I consume a lot of media, whether it be social media or not social media, but like media, whether it be on the phone or on the TV, whether it be news, documentaries, social media, whatever. So I'm an ideas guy. I'm all about ideas and consuming them. So I spend a lot of time on screens, to be honest with you, and that gives me a lot of stimulation, intellectual stimulation as well. So because as I said, I don't like traveling. I don't like all of that. Traveling is not for me. It takes me out of my zone, and I don't like going away and leaving my routine and my space. So I get my adventures in other ways.
And you live in Sydney, so no doubt you're near a beach.
Yeah, no, and the beach. And some of the beach is very important to me. It's my sort of major connection with nature is actually at the beach. It always has been. And I love the sun and the vitamin D. And so, I spend a fair bit of time on the beach when the weather and the season is right.
Now, before we get proper into it, we got straight into it. I was going to ask you, what was the last album you listened to? Because I'm always interested in the types of music that everyone plays.
I have... wow. Yeah. So I have a record player. I play vinyl records.
Yeah, nice.
And the records that I have in my collection, it's not too big, but are ones that are kind of iconic, ones that I've kind of grown up with and mean a lot to me. So this is the last one.
Oh, Rodriguez, Cold Fact. I love Rodriguez. He was an amazing, talk about reinvention, and we'll probably touch on reinvention, but, he was a guy who came out of nowhere, completely unknown, and became one of the biggest stars in the world, seemingly overnight, but he'd been in obscurity for decades.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because Searching for Sugar Man is the documentary. This album was massive in South Africa, and around the time when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, living during apartheid in South Africa, did military conscription, and it was a very stifling place to live in many ways, and there was no freedom of expression and freedom of media and freedom of thought and all that kind of stuff. And when this album came out with all these lyrics on the back, it was like a breath of fresh air, like we'd never heard. It was a voice of dissent, and we loved it. We'd never heard anything like this. It was like, wow, And so it was interesting how we all just like gravitated towards this album, and it became really, really big. And then quite a few years later, some dudes in Cape Town said, well, who is Rodriguez and where is he? and he was selling all these records in South Africa, well, this album, and in Australia and New Zealand. Actually.
He was big in Australia.
Yeah, at the same time. And he had no idea that he was selling records. He was living as working in Detroit as a mechanic in the cold Detroit weather, servicing motor cars, poor, down and out. And they eventually tracked him down and said, are you the man? He goes, yeah. And they go, well, your record's like, this is huge. And he was like, really? I had no fucking idea. And they got him to tour South Africa, and they whipped him out, and he did a tour. And I've since seen him twice in at Bluesfest in Byron Bay. He's come to Australia. He's toured here a few times. And that's kind of the story. But it's not... So it's an interesting story. I think he's died now, actually. I think he did. Yeah, he did. He died a year or two ago. But it's just an amazing story that we were living in this kind of weird society called South Africa back then. We were cut off and isolated from the world in so many ways. And then this album somehow creeped through the cracks, and we used to lie there. I remember I was 16, 17, we used to play it at night, late at night, and listen to it, And it just, it was kind of sort of a freedom of thought and ideas and expression in the album, which we never really had before.
Well, and that's been consistent in your life, hasn't it? That freedom of thinking and of course in branding, of course that is. But, even when you're coming up with keynote addresses for speaking, which we'll dig into, I wanted the theme today to be kind of around living large and getting out of your comfort zone. I know this is one of your pet topics. You've got a number of pet topics, and you've used the phrase, I believe, at some stage, living a 10 out of 10 life. What does a 10 out of 10 life mean to you?
When I think about life and the world, I approach it in two ways. The one is I get very big and I see all the big picture stuff and the patterns and what's going on. And I come to the conclusion we live in a very fucked and messed up world. And that makes me really depressed, okay, and really pulls me down. But when I hyper focus and I'm suddenly living in the moment, in the day, and it's now, that's when, it's like smell the roses, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's a 10 out of 10, So it's just how you show up and how every day and moment is for you. And of course, every moment is not like that in life. You wake up some days, you feel terrible. You're not feeling like a 10 at all. But the 10 is the goal. That's like the ultimate, because what I do is I actually ask people and say, so I get a group of people in the room and I say, okay, here's a statement. I'm living an extraordinary and an amazing life, okay? I want you to score yourself out of 10. If you're a 10, you're a fucking legend. All hail to you. If you're a 1, it's a disaster, or you're somewhere in between, okay? So everyone puts up their hands. So now there's something going on here. Everyone's being influenced by the judgment of others, okay? No one's going to put their hand up and say, yeah, I'm a 10, because people are going to go, mate, like, put your head in, stop being an arrogant dick, sort of thing. So the average is always about a 7, It's always a 7, yeah? And so that's an interesting point of departure when you're talking to people who want to live happy, fulfilled, meaningful lives, because we have a very good quality of life in Australia. We're very lucky here, we have, our health's taken care of, our this, our that, our food, we've got, in terms of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we're like well looked after, So like we all, a 7 out of 10 is, for many people in the world, that's a great existence,
Yep.
But what about people who are living a 7, but they still fundamentally dissatisfied and not fulfilled, And that's where the 10 comes in. It's like, what's missing? What are you holding back on? There's a handbrake happening here. What's causing that? What's that about? So that's what I use that to try and nudge people up, yeah?
Yeah.
Some people say to me, yeah, but like, if I'm a 10 today, there's no room for improvement tomorrow. What am I going to do tomorrow? And I'm going, yeah, well, that's assuming that you are alive tomorrow. Because that's an assumption, because you might not be. Because some people today who are alive right now will not be alive tomorrow. So if you're like waiting for some day or one day to be a 10, you might not get the chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's this idea about now is the time, now is the day, now is the moment, And when you do need to show up in life, for big things, like for me, it's a big presentation or it's a big client meeting or it's a big, or whatever, like I want to show up and be a 10, you know what I mean? And so, but I don't show up to my cat and be a 10 when I get home, you know what I mean? Because my cat doesn't really care. So it's sort of those moments, when you're on and you got to show up and this is it. And then like, okay, here we go, and give your best and be your best. And too many people just don't live their lives that way. They just fail to do that. And then they look back and they go, oh, shit, yeah, okay. What was that about? Yeah. So that's kind of how I use that to talk about it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the whole thing too is, that's less, I take it you're less about the toys and all the fun, all the things that cash can buy, but more of an inward looking being yourself. And I know you're big on authenticity and and you push people. I've sat in some of your talks and you push people in terms of getting out of your comfort zone. So the people who are saying they're 7s, do you put the question up to them about their comfort zone and how many of them are pushing out of their comfort zone? Because a lot of people don't do it historically.
That's right. Well, the 7 is the comfort zone. That's the metaphor.
Right.
That's what it is. That's the default setting. Right. The default setting is I'm a 7. It's a reasonable number. It's a very sensible number. It's a good position to take. It doesn't require me taking any too rash risks or anything, and that's off we go. And it's like, okay, so when you die, will you be happy if I engrave on your tombstone, he was a 7? Is that the legacy in the life you want? No, it's not. No one wants that, yeah? So what's the deal, And then I start to help people unpack for themselves what are the things that are holding them back, fear of rejection, a fear of standing out, fear of looking stupid, fear of being wrong, fear of judgment, all these things that stop us from speaking up and saying things perhaps and holding us back, and that's what kind of then gets in the way. And when they start to realize that, they realize the impact of that on their lives, and the quality of their lives, and a lot of these fears, like if I'm fear of being judged because there's a voice in my head, and there's always a voice in my head. There's a voice saying, I'm an idiot, or there's a voice in my head saying, yeah, I'm stupid and no one's going to like me. Now, if you go around listening to a radio station all day that's saying that to you, I'm not likable, people don't like me, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid. Well, you're not going to go around, putting yourself out there. You're going to hold back and kind of, because everybody wants to kind of navigate the world in a way that they come out looking good and they're not too judged or hated. And, people are playing that game, looking good, not looking bad. And it's all bullshit, and it kind of gets in the way of living your life. And so I don't tell people that, but I kind of help people find out for themselves what it might be, what's in the way for them.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it lands and it works, and they go, oh shit, and they see things, and there's a breakthrough in that moment, where you recognize that I've been telling myself for years and years that I'm a bad person, and that ain't helping my cause here, so I need to, and then I'll turn to people and go, so somebody will say, I'm a bad person, and I go, yeah. So I was like, who works with John? Oh, we do. So is John a bad person? Are you surprised that he says that? And they go, no idea where he gets that from. He is the most amazing guy, yada, 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 yada. So then you kind of go, yeah, so I'm a bad person is a story you've made up. Yeah. Maybe it goes back to when you were a kid or whatever. It's completely bullshit, but it's running your life in really important, fundamental ways, and you want to get rid of that or start changing that. And the first way to do that is to actually talk about it and share it and put it out there. And then people go, no, you're not that person at all, mate. You're fantastic, Yes. And then that's like, oh, okay. And that sort of helps people, transform and then kind of move on and then be themselves and be more authentic.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What given that we're, our audience, our listeners here are, middle-aged, 50-plus-ish. Don't want to put necessarily a number on it, but, we've been around. Let's put it that way. Got the scars on the knuckles and the scuffs on the knees, metaphorically speaking. Tell me, how does that then, that whole notion of a 7, for people that have been around, is it, because you talk to audiences that are all different ages, what's your take on people that are already successful, been around, climbed the corporate ladder, run very successful businesses? Do you find that people are still in their comfort zone, or do you feel that they regress, or they just keep pushing forward and wanting to achieve more? What's your general take on that?
That a lot of people are not fulfilled and happy and satisfied in the way they want to be, despite and in the face of their successes.
Yeah. Wow.
So what I will do is, this is what I do. So it's the end of the year, it's Christmas party time. So now it's 9 o'clock, everyone's had a few drinks. So I'll go to someone, senior person, and say, so how's the year been? And I go, I go, give me a score out of 10. Okay. That's what I always do. Give me a score out of 10. It's like, oh, no, it's been good. Business has been good. And no, we've made some money. So 8 to 9, I go, okay, that's cool. That's, what about you? And they go, what do you mean? Well, your life, your health, your relationships, your all that. Oh, fuck. And they go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We got a 5, or 6, Like it's very seldom that people, have the same score, They're thinking about, well, it's a business thing, it's a business party, Christmas party, house, but what about you, And again, it comes back to the old Maslow hierarchy of needs, The thing that's right at the top is called self-actualization, to become everything that you are capable of becoming and being as a human being, And that's a human potential thing, It doesn't mean you can't be successful in business, and of course you can, and make money and all that. But it's not about making money either. There are some very successful people out there who are very unfulfilled and not feeling they're living very meaningful lives. And I think when it gets to this age as well, what's quite interesting is that people then start to think about giving back to community, and that starts to kick in. And I think that's the key towards happiness and fulfillment and joy, is to stop living in a world where you're just serving yourself and your own interests, and then you start, showing up and being there to serve and meet the concerns and needs of others. And when you start behaving in that way, in a kind way, being nice to other people, reaching out, you actually, Martin Seligman, the whole authentic happiness thing, that's the train that that leads to happiness and contentment and fulfillment when you're living a life in service of others, which we tend to do when we have kids, but it's not quite the same. I don't think, it's more a social thing. But a lot of people do that when they get to 55, 65, around there, sort of retiring. Some have made money. Okay, how do I use this money in a positive way to benefit society? I've got some causes I believe in, things like that. So that's good when that happens.
And I've found it, and look, I've seen the odd research back this up, but, when I was doing the research, to develop this show, but, people that have been, again, let's talk in that sort of third chapter, and they start to question what they've been doing. Can I do anything a bit more meaningful? And that's sort of what you're talking about, in as much as that they can do that. They can, use their nous and maybe their cash to try something new or to help someone else.
So Martin Seligman talks about happiness, and there's 3 levels of happiness, There's the pleasant life, and the pleasant life is sex, drugs, rock and roll, shopping, all those things we do to get a quick fix, Then there's the good life. The good life is when you are engaged meaningfully in your life, in your world, especially the work you're doing, okay? Then there's the meaningful life, and the meaningful life is the good life, but you're meaningfully engaged, but in service of others. Okay, so he talks about those 3. So the pleasant life, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Guess how much that contributes towards your happiness, according to him, anyway.
In a percentage, 17.5%. No, not even that.
No, it's 0. According to mine.
Gosh damn.
0. Then there's the good life, and then there's the meaningful life. And so it's kind of interesting. So if you've got somebody. Like if somebody's living, so let's go back to the 710. If somebody's living a good life and they're meaningfully engaged in their work and all that, but there's something still missing, okay? They're not quite fulfilled and all that. Okay, cool. So that to me is a 7. And that put down, I'm a 7. Okay. Now, how do we get you to be a 10? Okay, and this is what positive psychology is about. It's about psychology for people who are well, but want to be even more well. You know what I mean? It's not for people who are completely messed up. So you want to move from a 7 to a 10. So they have these interventions, okay? So one of the interventions that Martin Seligman has is, an intervention is, and so I've got this, I'll explain something. I've got this video that I play to people, and it's of this guy whose mother dies, okay? And it's really fucking sad, and he tells her how much he loves her and all that. But the saddest part about the story is he'd never told her that before. Okay, and that gets everybody. It's like, oh, yeah, right. So then when we stop, I go, okay, who do you need to have that conversation with? Who do you need to tell in your life, not just like love you, but sit down and have a meaningful conversation and tell them how much they mean to you, how much you love them. It might be a friend, it might be a parent, it might be a teacher, the conversation that you haven't had. Now, that is an intervention. That's a positive psychology intervention. So when you then go and have that conversation with someone, which is a bit like, oh, really? Do I need to do this? Yeah, you do. Okay. It's a breakthrough. Your dopamine goes up. You feel good. They feel good. There's something new in the relationship. Things have been said that will never be forgotten. And that's a great way to move forward. So it's really interesting, where you can live a successful life, but there are interventions which are more about, being more of a human being and being more vulnerable and being more approachable and reaching out to others and being that person more and more. And when you step into that world and that space, that's where you start to find your inner fulfillment, your motivation, your happiness. That's where it starts to come from.
So and that's like a small act that you can do. And that kind of leads me to, let's face it, we live in a world that's pretty messy and hyper connected, but we are disconnected at the same time. I mean, we see loneliness as a massive issue.
Yeah.
But you just pulling that thread a bit, you have a philosophy about making the difference one person at a time. I think I've seen you tell the story of the starfish?
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope it's a story. Why don't you tell us that one? I didn't give you a heads up. I'm going to ask you that.
People live in a world where it's all about me. This is the whole thing. The good life, me, what I think, what I believe, what I know, what I've learned, what I want, me. And then I go, no. You want to step into what I call a you and me world. What do we need? What do we want? What's going on here? And so that's where the story of the starfish comes along. There's a kid on the beach, and there are thousands of starfish all on the shore, washed up there. They're going to probably die, the tide's going out. He's there with his mum, and he starts throwing them in one at a time. And then his mum says to him, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, Johnny, he goes, I'm throwing them back in, Mom. He goes, Mom says, it's not going to make any difference to any bloody starfish. And he goes, yeah, you see this one, Mom? It'll make a difference to that starfish. And then he throws it back in. And that's the difference that one person can make to another person, a few words, a gesture, a smile, a comment, something that makes someone's day, someone's week. You don't know. You just don't know what's going on for people. And that's just a good way to be, I believe, fundamentally. And it's good for you. It's good for everybody else. And it's quite interesting because in certain towns and cities, I think it's more prevalent. Like if I go to Brisbane, I feel I can look at strangers on the street and they will look at me and hold the eye gaze. I don't know. It's not a second longer. Maybe it's half a second longer, but they're just a bit more happy to have contact and connection and look and acknowledge, Whereas in Sydney, if you look at someone like that, they're kind of like, what do you want? You know what I mean? It's this sort of assumption that you're a creep or a pervert or something, And it's like, yeah, right, whereas I just go around like what's it called? Happy, whatever, just smiling at people if, it's like, because I think that's a good thing to do, So it's little acts towards everybody. And, I work with there's a guy called Ralph Kelly, whose son, Thomas, the Kelly family, he lost his two sons. Yeah, it's quite a famous story. He was just up the road here where I live in King's Cross. He was king punched and his son died. And Ralph's got an organization which he runs called Stay Kind. And it's a sort of legacy to his boys. And I do the social media for him, yeah? And he has this message. If every Australian did, one act of kindness a day, it would be like, billions of acts of kindness every year. So he kind of pushes that message. It's the same idea, one little thing here. And it's not just good for the people that you're doing it for, it's good for you. And that's what positive psychology tells us, that the most positive intervention into your happiness and fulfillment is to do a kind act or something nice for somebody else. There's nothing better that you can do for your own good. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, for a lot of people, those small acts that's the start of getting out of your comfort zone, isn't it? I mean, just to do that, that's it out of your comfort zone. Doesn't need to be this big, hairy, audacious goal.
No, that's exactly it. So it's like the power of tiny gains, little things, little steps that you do, that continuous, and that's the way it goes. It's not you don't have to open a whole kind of new hospital or whatever, to change the world, but you can change the world in your way through those little small acts. And I think that's really important. And again, there's James Cleary's book, Atomic Habits.
Yep.
He had an interesting life from having a really, really bad injury when he was much younger. And he slowly built his way back by little things that he did every single day, And it's like the idea that if you improve or do something every day and it gets a bit better, after a year, you suddenly like, it's way different, Because if you don't, you just like, you're ground zero, you don't go anywhere. So it's that principle. Kaizen, continuous improvement, it's that as well.
Yeah.
So it's that. And I often try and get people, if I've got time in workshops to say, okay, so this is, here we are, I've done the whole journey, here's the thing. So here's a new agreement. Actually, I'm a great person now. And like, okay, I'm not an arsehole, I'm a kind guy. Okay, fantastic. What are you going to do? Like, what are you going to now do that's different that you haven't been doing before, okay? And that's the final thing, where you turn that into actions, but it's small little actions. It's not some big thing that you have to do. I believe anyway.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, actually starting to talk to people and, again, we are in a connected world, but we're in a very disconnected world. And, obviously still post-COVID, has had a massive effect on people. But, if I go to the country, in a country town, people will always, not hesitate to say hello. It's a bit hit and miss in the city. But I found that, in the United States, that San Francisco it was very friendly the last time I was there. Or, in England, in the little villages, people will always say hello. So, but it's good to be able to stop and talk to people and do that side of things. But growing up in the country, we did it all the time. In the city, it's just not as big a deal. And
no, it is good. It is good. But again, people are scared to do it.
Yeah.
People are scared. They want to mind their own business. They don't want to, if I say something to someone or reach out, they might think I have some other motive or other agenda and
fear of rejection.
Yeah, fear of rejection, fear of being vulnerable or exposed in some way. I mean, people are genuinely, like you get into a lift, like no one looks at each other in the lift. Everyone's like, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, right. Like I'm the guy that talks in the lifts. I'm like, hey, like, yeah, right. That's not really lift etiquette. Why not? And especially if it's a lift like in a building and everybody works for the same company. But they work in different departments on different floors and no one introduces themselves. Hi, I'm Jack. I work on level 7. I'm part of this thing. I've seen you here for the last 3 years, regularly in the lift, but we never talk. We never, if your companies have got silos and barriers and people aren't communicating, get them talking to each other in the lift. That's a good place to start. Small action. But if everyone does that and they all get to know people a little bit better in that way, it'll break down boundaries and silos. It's that simple.
Better still, walk in the stair lift, get your steps up and talk to people.
Yeah. Okay. You want to do that.
Now let's take a U-turn, because you recently took a U-turn to speaking of getting out of your comfort zone. You were, I think the right terminology is groom. You were a contestant or a groom, I think they call them, on Married at First Sight. Now, this is certainly
oldest groom ever.
Oldest groom ever. So this is MAFS, as it's called, Married at First Sight Australia. There's a MAFS in the UK. I'm not sure how global it is. Do you know how big it is around the world?
Yeah. It's the same as the one in Australia. No, it's massive.
Yeah.
UK one is actually airing at the moment. It's just finishing. Channel 9 are airing it on their 9 Now channel.
So you were, 62 when you went on that? You've just had a birthday last week. So
that's right.
That's
62.
62 when you went for MAFS.
Yeah.
So, most people if people are that age and listening, they probably say, oh my God, there's no way. Will you ever walk us through the process of that? Why, how and why? Because you have to submit to it. They don't just come to you, I don't believe.
I applied as a sort of a dare from my daughter.
Oh.
It was about 18 months ago. So I was just, we came out of 2021, 22. I just wanted to have someone in my life as a kind of, friend, on the dating apps, and it was a complete disaster. It was just a disaster. And I was like, oh my God, this is just terrible. Everyone's running a mile. So I can tell you about that later. When people say, so I said to my daughter, I was complaining, and MAFS has been a father-daughter thing that we've done for years. And she just said, well, why don't you just apply for MAFS, Dad? Let's see what they come up with. And I was like, yeah, right. And she goes, yeah, go. So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. It takes, 45 minutes, put in an application. The chances of being picked, they've roughly got about, 50,000 names on their database from the current years and previous years. They hold names over as well. So the chances of getting picked are like 0.03%, or something like it's ridiculously small. Like you don't expect to get chosen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I applied, and then I started getting calls. Like 6 weeks later, I forgot about it. The calls come. Oh shit, okay. And then you get another call, and you realize, okay, oh shit, okay, this is getting serious now. And then they say, what's the size of your wedding ring finger? I'm like, oh, okay. Because they asked me that before they told me I was on the show. And then I get the call saying, oh, you're on the show. So what do I say? Like, actually, I thought about it. No. You know what I mean? If the universe conspires to make that happen, I'm like, okay, well, fuck, here we go. So let's do it. So off I went, and they filmed for 3 or 3.5 months. It was pretty tough, mate.
So this is for people who haven't watched it. It's reality TV. Now I want to ask you. I mean, you're in that industry. I mean, as in media, marketing, communications, advertising. So you'd know more than most what goes on in behind the scenes. You'd know that it's reality TV and it's a lot of it's set up and everything. How did you approach going in with your knowledge? Others might not have had that knowledge. Were you super cynical, or did you just say whatever happens, happens?
I approach it as I approach life and everything. I live in a very friendly universe, not a hostile one. I'm very naive in that way. I go in very open-hearted. I go in there open-minded, and just I trusted them. I believe that they, as a show, had the right intentions for us as contestants. That we were really there to find love, and they were really there to help us find love. And so I went along for the ride. In that I knew I'd have to sacrifice, for 3.5 months my time, because your time is theirs, literally. They tell you where you are, what you got to do, what you can't do, curfews at night, all this stuff, I knew that was going to be the case. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to just accept that and roll with that. I don't want to be a difficult person on the show. It's not going to make life easy for me or them. And so I went in there with good intentions, very, very good intentions, yeah. But there were some things about myself that I didn't realize. Okay, and which I now do realize. Okay, so this has been like, you do something like that, you go through all this and all the criticism and the commentary and the hate speech, and it's like, oh, it was really hard, mate, really hard. But I have some, massive fan base as well, and people who are like, yeah, right, okay, thank you. But when I watched it myself. So I'm sitting there watching it live when it went to air. I don't know what they're going to edit and what's going to come out. I have no idea. Like all of us. Yeah, I'm sitting here watching it and I'm going, "Fuck, is that me? Is that how I come across? Is that how I speak? Is that how I laugh? Is that how emotional I am? Is that how rigid I get around stuff? Is that how dysfunctional I am?" Around emotional conversations and things. Like I was, who gets the chance to watch themselves like a fly on the wall? You know what I mean? Yeah. And literally sit back and go, what the fuck? So I was quite like devastated and I was like, oh my God, and I was just like, yeah, but I'm completely dysfunctional. I'm a complete fuck up. Okay. That was the sort of conclusion I was coming to. And it's just like, yeah, damn. And then, so everyone goes to therapy, because everyone who goes to maths is in therapy. Yeah? That's quite a funny story. So I'm at my therapist, and she says, do you reckon you've got ADHD, Richard? And I'm like, what? So, long story short, I got diagnosed as being a little positive, high on the spectrum of ADHD in May. So that was a couple of months after maths ended, at the age of 63. Yeah. So that's what I learned about myself. So when I look back now through that experience, and in fact look back to my whole life, I can see how ADHD has impacted my life. In every domain of my life, ADHD has. It's been a fuck around, to be honest with you. It really has been. It's made it hard for me to sustain a marriage. It's made it hard for me to be the sort of parent my kids want. It's made it hard for me to have a corporate career, which I never had. I mean, I could have had and should have had a brilliant corporate career, but I didn't. And there's different types of ADHD. I mean, mine is more impulsive, hyperactive. No surprises there. And it's like, yeah, right. So it's kind of interesting. And so a lot of my stuff, like one of a strong trait of somebody with ADHD is risk-taking behavior, okay? So when we go back to the 7 and the 10 and live in your comfort zone, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I don't live in my comfort zone because I get out there, but is that because you've got ADHD? And maybe that is, and maybe that's a bit crazy and stupid. But as a neurodiverse person, I can speak to normal people and go, yes, but be careful that you still do take risks in your life too, because risks are important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as a neurodiverse person, I have some good lessons and wisdom, I think, for normal people. But at the same token, I need to look at myself and go, hang on a second, I need to sort this out a bit. I need to get the balance a bit better here and get my overall functioning to be better. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I've ended up after maths, which is, totally surprising to me.
But you didn't get married.
No, we get married, but like it's not sort of legal wedding. But then I got married and did all that.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, that was like, and she was great. You know, like I was really into her. We connected really well. It lasted about 2 weeks, so that was it. You know, so like in the normal world, it would have been like a little 2-week little flurry affair. That would have been nice, and we would have moved on. But oh no, it's maths. Oh no, you got to stick it out now, son, and work it through. You know, and one of the things is, so I kind of realized this in hindsight that a lot of people on the show, when they're being filmed and stuff, they know they're being filmed and they know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that what's coming across from them is considered and intelligent and making them look the way they want to be seen. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like when we show up at a meeting at work. It's like, whatever. You know, you got an important thing. I want to show up looking intelligent and suave and confident or whatever the fuck, yeah? So you can have... And a lot of them are very successful at that. There was one contestant on this season called Lucinda, who's a master of ceremonies and a speaker, does wedding celebrant. And I mean, she was just like brilliant on the camera. And they just lapped her up. And she's now like literally touring the world, talking to people about all her stuff, okay? So as much as if I try to put on that kind of demeanor, let's say, under the pressure on the commitment ceremony of all the cameras, 14 cameras and everyone watching and all that, I just flake. I'm too impulsive. I can't control myself. I can't control what I say. It just, before I think it and it's straight out of my mouth, before I can stop it, you know what I mean? And that's a classic ADHD, where you just like overshare, overtalk, mate, just hang on there, But now it's on camera, okay? And I reckon they filmed 200 hours of me, and I reckon 30 hours made it, that 3 hours made it to air, of just me, of the whole show. So I reckon about 1.5% of what they filmed, they used, okay? So arguably, that was the worst 1.5% of me that you could get on film, in my most... baddest ADHD moments, just like blurting shit out and being an asshole, and it's like, yeah, right, okay, there you go. But imagine if your life was filmed and you've now got to make a movie of your life, okay, of the 1%, like, what are you going to put in it? What are you going to leave out of it?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want people, how do you want people to see you? Trevor, as a nice, sweet, charming man, But if you've got ADHD and you've got no control over that, because literally in the moment, under the pressure, the shit just happens, and I literally have no control over it. So
in the end...
Interesting, very interesting. If I knew I had ADHD before going on maths, I wouldn't have gone on it. Well, not without the medication, because I've got medication now, and I can, which helps me a lot at the moment. But yeah, if I knew that with no medication, and I thought, no, I wouldn't have gone on. I didn't know it. But it took me to go on it to realize that I had
know. So in the wash-up, a good thing that you went on.
I don't. People ask me to say, is it a good thing? Has maths been a good thing? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I would say, at first, for most of this year, I would have said, the way I feel about it is like, no, I don't think it was a good thing at all. But now, okay, so the ADHD that's come through. I think that's a good thing. I'm actually now writing a book about that.
Yep.
Because I think ADHD is misdiagnosed and undiagnosed. 80% of people are not diagnosed. It's life-changing. And there's a lot of social stigma and moral judgment attached to it. I've been judged my whole life for my behaviors as being, just slack and lazy and this and all that, with no understanding of actually my condition. So I'm writing a book, which is kind of my experience a little bit, my life, maths, how I saw myself, why I got diagnosed, what ADHD is. So I'm trying to get it out there a bit And also at the same time, as I write, it's like therapy. You know what I mean? I get, yeah, it's good and bad. Some days I just finish and I'm like, oh my God, what a fuck up I am.
Well, you need to get it out there. You need to get it out there while you've still.
I'm fucking writing this thing. No, I've got to go a third of the way through, maybe even even halfway nearly. Oh no, I'm just like churning it out. Yeah, I'm just like.
Because you had a bit of a media profile, obviously, after the show and did a few of the talk shows and stuff. So still a bit of media talent residual there.
So there is. People recognise me still, and there's all that stuff, But I just want to create awareness around, like the ADHD as a mental health issue, and it's not, ADHD is kind of interesting because it's almost used as a sort of colloquial term, Someone's a bit crazy or a bit forgetful. It's like, oh, you must have ADHD. It's like, no, mate. No. It's not like that. It's a fucking serious thing. You know what I mean? And it's really, and so, like, but because my reward, the chemicals in my brain that feed my reward system are lower. Okay. So for me to do a task, the reward needs to be good. Okay. Or else I can't do it. So I can do work. I can work on a branding project and I can hyper focus, man, and get right in there and fucking gun it, yeah? But if you ask me to run my life on a budget, or assemble an IKEA cabinet or, do something a bit sensible or practical, it's like, no way, And for years, people have assumed that's just because I just don't want to do it and I'm just an asshole. And it's like, actually, no, I actually can't do it, So things like that, and it's like I'm starting to become really clear on stuff, and also things like routine, and I need that routine. It's very important to me. I'm sort of working that out. There are a lot of strategies that people can have for dealing with it, so I'm sort of learning about those and becoming aware of my own as I'm writing about it as well. Yeah. So that's why I'm doing this, to kind of get it out there, and so it needs to. 80% of people are not diagnosed, and that's like way too high, and it's massive condition. It's like it's a real problem,
There's a fair bit of that, and I guess it's interesting, getting that diagnosis at your age too, because probably, as you say, it explains a lot over your journey. But does it sort of, I guess now it's kind of, I wouldn't want to say reinvention, but it you can see the world through different eyes now.
Oh yeah, no, for sure I can. Definitely, I see the world through different, and I see a lot of my thoughts and thinking and views through that lens now. And I was like, okay, well, that's sort of where it comes from, So at one point I thought, so does that make what I'm saying kind of valid or not? And I'm going, no, I think it does, because I think a lot of the most, a lot of the greatest, creative people in the world and all that are ADHD. Okay. Yeah. So we bring a perspective to life that other people don't see and don't have. It's a different perspective, a different view, which is which is why I'm so good at branding, because that's the key to branding, is seeing the thing and nobody else sees. Actually, guys, that's what your brand's about, And it's also pattern recognition and linking concepts. And when it comes to that kind of shit, like I'm really good, But and that's kind of but like the way I see everything else is it is a bit like, I'm still processing the life that I haven't lived. Like if I had ADHD diagnosed when I was 30, before I had kids, before I got married. Now I was married by then, I just got married, and before I started my proper corporate career and all that stuff, I think my life would have been very different. I don't know if it would have been better. I probably would have been more functional, I suppose. It would have been better in many ways, because one of the problems with ADHD is people's executive functioning is not very good. Yeah. Planning, organizing, sense of time, sense of, budgeting, all that, and that's the whole idea that I'm a bit of a poor leader when it comes to managing a lot of areas of my own life does resonate with me quite a lot. I'm a bit of a child, that's where the energy comes from, and let's just be free and go for it, so I need to temper my messages, I think, in future as well. Like, so this is coming from a person that has ADHD, but just because you haven't got it, don't fall into the 7 out of 10 trap and make that your whole life. You know what I mean? And live a life that's really, subpar for you. So that's kind of what I want to start working into my talks and my thinking and stuff as I'm writing this book.
Yeah, good. And this is your third book.
Yeah.
Do you like the process of writing a book? I mean, I think that people who have had a good life and professional and entrepreneurial and done things and traveled and all that, they've got the wisdom, they've got the ideas, they've got the skills, the expertise, the stories, the experiences, the whole box and dice. Not for everyone, but I'm a big believer that having a book, whatever that book is about, is just a great thing to do, because you learn so much about yourself. And to do it after a few decades, if you haven't done it before, it's a really powerful thing to do. It's an artifact that's out there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. My first book was Wake Up Tiger, and I only wrote that because I had all these thoughts and I just needed to get them down on paper. Like, what am I actually trying to say here? And I did. And it's this whole process, and it's this journey people go on. And it's like, okay, cool, there we go. Second book was just a bit of a dud, really, just a whole lot of random thoughts. But this is kind of like a bit like Wake Up Tiger again. It's like, okay, so what's going on now? And I'm applying it. But I've got a specific ADHD for adults, is the thing. Because ADHD has always been, for a long time, it's been known as a class, a kids condition. It's always kids, in the classroom setting. It's always, that's where it all started out, and that's when it was first diagnosed. And then and if you're an adult and you've got ADHD, it's of course you just haven't grown up, so you need to grow up and move on. And it's like, no. Now it's a condition for life, and they now know that. And in fact, this part of my brain, and these 5 areas, frontal lobe area, that are 3 to 10% smaller than normal brains. Like, it's that different. You know what I mean? And all of this here is our executive functioning and controlling impulses and emotional control. It's all sitting up there. And it's just not functioning the same, And it doesn't change when you get older. It's still there,
Yeah.
But then, because people talk about it as like a joke, everyone's, oh, well, I've got that too. And it's like, well, no, you haven't actually. And it's a lot more serious than what you think. And I want to get it out there, because I think it's very important. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the book will write itself. I mean, I'm a great believer that when you're writing books, some people, I got to write a book because it's going to build my personal brand and get me in business. And sure, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a
of
a content marketing play. But with a lot of books too, they got to write. You talk to authors, and I've talked to a lot of authors on the show, and the book writes, so it has to get out. I'm writing it now because it has to get out. So like your first book, you had all these thoughts, you wanted to get it down on paper, and that's the process of writing. I also often encourage people who want to write a book and have been hanging back on writing that book to do it, because it's a life-changing experience. Right. Richard, thank you very much. You've been very open, and I've really enjoyed the talk and the stories, and I knew it was going to be high velocity conversation, having known you as I have over the journey. But just, I want to finish up on, you're talking to someone, our audience, 50 plus, they've been successful. They're still successful by pretty much all measures, but they probably want a bit more meaning in their life. They want to probably run their own race a little bit more, live on their own terms, maybe expand their horizons still and get out of their comfort zone, which is something we've been talking about. Maybe professional reinvention, perhaps, I don't know. Right. But what should they be thinking about? What questions should they maybe asking and addressing? What's a couple of things that you can leave us with to get people thinking and to maybe take some action on internally thinking, looking inwards?
Well, I think looking inwards is the key for that. That's the first point. Carl Jung said, people who look outside dream, people who look inside wake up. So, if you're looking outside, well, that's just a dream. That's another thing. But if you look inside, that's when you wake up and you start to see stuff. So I think that's where the journey starts, is looking on the inside. And that's what I've been doing through psychiatry, through psychology, and through open conversations with people, being authentic, being vulnerable, and understanding myself in a human way, and living in what I call a you and me world, not just in a world that's about me all the time, So I think those are the key. That's kind of the shift, you want to start making in your head and your heart as well. And I think generally older people tend to be a bit more like that. They're a bit more, they get a bit more chilled, and they've kind of succeeded in all the ways that society kind of expects them to. So it's like, well, now what? It's like, well, now just be a nice human being and be kind and reach out to people and be loving and sweet. And you know what I mean? Like that's what it takes. And and see where the road leads you, you know?
Yeah, I like it.
You know The Alchemist?
Look, I've never read it, but I've heard of it.
The book, The Alchemist, that's the other thing.
Is that Paul Coelho?
Read The Alchemist. Because it's all about what's your treasure and what's your heart. Where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. And I think a lot of people, when they go through the whole career thing, they kind of forget that.
Yeah.
You know, when you were 18, 19, what was the dream? You know, like, do you remember? You know, go back to that and the purpose and the whole thing and see if you can reconnect to that. I think that's also worthwhile doing. And the book to read is The Alchemist.
Okay.
It'll take you there. Yeah.
And you just said there, I mean, I'll just summarize that best I can. So there's the inward looking, the me. So you do look at yourself, but then the outward manifestation really is to try and look at you, other people as well, me and you together. And
that's right. That's right.
And small things, tiny steps, small actions.
Tiny steps, small actions. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of interesting because but also like The Alchemist, and the whole point there is like, so what is life about, you know, actually, you know? And so you remember that airplane that went down in the Hudson River?
I do recall. It was a big moment for Twitter.
Yeah, there was a guy on the plane, and he gave a very short talk about it. I've forgotten his name now. I think he's Rick. His name was Rick. And like, they were going to die. Like, that's it. Life was over, okay? So he's sitting there, and he's thinking to himself, what the fuck, you know? If I could, you know, what was important to my life? So he had these things. The one thing was, don't delay. So don't delay, don't wait for tomorrow, don't wait for the next day or next week. I was saying it to you earlier on, you know, like, you might not live tomorrow, okay? I buy bad wine, he says. I buy it today, I drink it today. I'm not like living for. Well, that suits me because I'm an ADHD person and I live for today, okay? I'm not very good at planning out 6 weeks, 2 months, 5 years, forget it, okay? That was his first thing, yeah? The second thing was that he said, have good relationships, you know, stop trying to be right and stop trying to, you know, choose being right, just choose to be happy. So that's with your people in your lives. And the last one was be a great person, be a great dad, be a great human being. And then, of course, he lived, you know, so now he goes around telling people, like, this is what life's about. Well, it was for me anyway, when I got death and staring me in the face. And it happens. Like, my neighbor down the road here died on Sunday, okay? He's my age. And suddenly there's a whole lot of people now looking at their lives in a different way, going, fuck, he's gone. Well, what does that mean for us? Like, you know, did I love him enough? You know, were we good? Like what's happened, you know? And you start to reassess things, you know? And that happens quite a lot. It's quite a common thing when people die or get something tragic happens and then everyone goes, oh my God, they all kind of wake up, you know? Yeah. It doesn't have to be like that though.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good wake-up call.
A good wake-up call. Well, we'll finish up on...
Wake-up call every now and then, mate, is necessary. Yeah, like my cat running around the room screaming with you wants food. I think my cat needs a wake-up call too.
I'll leave it on the note. You can go and find what your cat's doing. I urge people to follow you on Instagram. What's your handle on Instagram? Because you're always putting up little motivational snippets. And
I got two, the Richard Sauerman and the Brand Guy. Those are the two. I've got a Channel 9 one, which they, you know, and then I got my original Brand Guy one on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, and you know, sort of everywhere.
Everywhere. Easy to find. Awesome, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Trevor.
Cheers.
Take it easy, mate. Bye-bye.